and the Red Wings beat reporter for The Athletic, co-host of The Athletic Hockey Show, Max Boltman, joining us. What's up, man?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Pretty good, man. Good,
Always
man.
Good on Toronto Elimination Day.
Yes. Speaking of which, we got to ask Mitch Marner, is how realistic is this? Because I know it's not just the Red Wings in pursuit of this man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a general manager of a hockey team and you're not calling Mitch Marner, I got to question why. He is the biggest free agent to make it to market. We think he hasn't made it to market yet, but probably since John Tavares went to the Maple Leafs, 2019. So it's very rare that a player of his caliber, a 100-point forward in his prime. Marner, very good defensive player as well. He's small, so you don't think of him as a very good defensive player. And the Red Wings obviously have a lot of small. That would be the biggest question for them. But he's an excellent player. He's the biggest free agent on the market, and they're a team that needs to improve. So I certainly would hope and expect that they will be calling.
And I think something that people talk about, because I'm pushing for Mitch Marner heavy. He's a 100-point guy. They don't grow on trees. You need one. If you want to be a good team, you need a guy like that. But everybody's like, oh, we need power forwards. We need somebody like that, which I do agree with. But there's a guy in the system, and right now, who's kind of tearing it up in the worlds in MBN. You look at him and what he can. Even Steve Yzerman said, like, if the kid has a summer, he's got a chance at making the team next year. And so far, he's having a pretty good summer. And I'll let you do the total pronunciation because you're the actual professional. I'm just an idiot. But MBN, does he have a chance of actually making this team next year?
A chance, I suppose. I mean, anything's possible, right? It depends on how guys come into training camp, how they look in the preseason. I think most likely he's in Grand Rapids, but I think his game is really going to translate to North America. I'll tell you that. I mean, there was the debate of should he go back to Sweden or should he stay in Grand Rapids. Hindsight's 2020, but man, should he have ever stayed in Grand Rapids? Like, his game is just built to be on the small ice, banging bodies, running into guys, not playing in so much space like they have over in Europe. It's fine. He had a fine season. He had a very good playoffs there, but he came over in Grand Rapids and he's a point per game guy in the playoffs. Like, why were you not here all along? Right? It's probably what the Red Wings are thinking. So, he's having a nice Worlds too, but I do think he would benefit from some time in Grand Rapids, just continuing to adjust to the pace, continuing to get his own skating. Like, he's a big body to lug around. You got to have a lot of muscle on that. He is a big kid. It wouldn't shock me if he plays games in Detroit this year, but I would bet that he starts in Grand Rapids. But it is Brandon Nygaard is how you're going to go with that one for the pronunciation.
And he's a Viking. Like, I remember when he got drafted, I was like, I told D-Mac, D-Mac, you're going to love this kid. I was telling I was like, this is a playoff forward. He's going to hit you in the mouth, and he's got a rocket for a shot. So
I agree. That's exactly the profile. I did a story today that was like, who is the high-end, low-end comparables for all these guys, and every guy that I was picking for Brandon Nygaard was exactly what you just said, playoff performers, right? It's everybody from Zach Hyman to, Jake Neighbors to Vasily Podkolzin on the low end, right? I think he'll be better than that, but Podkolzin was a high pick at one point too. I even thought about like Matthew Nyes. I think Nyes is a little more skilled, but like these are the kind of players we're talking about. We're talking about the guys who wake up in April and dominate, and I think that's a really good kind of player to have in your system.
Absolutely.
I want to ask real quick about Marner in terms of Stevie Y. He's kind of been conservative, I'd say, in terms of acquiring big-name free agents and obviously the trade market and stuff like that. With this one still allowing you to keep your prospect pool and include yourself to compete right now, do you think you see Stevie spending that money on a Mitch Marner?
If they can get him, right? I mean, that's the question. Is does Mitch Marner want to come to Detroit? And, yes, I think there's an advantage to the free agent factor. You don't have to give anything else up. It's just money. And I think Mitch Marner is one of these guys that you would reasonably expect to be worth the money. Now, I say that. What kind of money are we talking about here? Because Mikko Rantanen just signed for $12 million. Are you going to give him 13? I mean, Mikko Rantanen's having one hell of a playoffs here in a way that Mitch Marner really has not. That's the one knock against him is in the biggest games for the Maple Leafs, he has not been their go-to guy, right? He has not found a way to rise to some of those moments. He's still a good player. He's still a very smart player. He did have one pretty bad turnover in Game 5 that obviously went viral, but he's a very good player. It's just will there be teams that are hesitant to make him the highest paid winger in NHL history, which seems inevitable to me. I mean, a winger like this that gets to free agency is probably going to be that. But, that's the question. I don't think the Red Wings can afford to not put themselves into that conversation. I mean, this is a team that needs a player like this. He is available, or we expect him to be come July 1. You got to put yourself in the mix for that. I mean, it would make them pretty small in the wings when you talk about Lucas Raymond, Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane, and Mitch Marner. Those are all I think Marner's technically listed at 6'0", might be 5'11", though, right? Like that could be a real small winger core. Yeah. But he's really good, and I don't know how you can talk yourself out of it other than, the money and the playoff performances.
Some of the stuff I've been hearing people trying to talk themselves out of is him being a Austin Matthews merchant. Like, yeah, he's putting up 100 points, but how many of that is because he's playing one of the best goal scorers in the league?
A lot of teams have good players, easy, right? I mean, it's like, everyone. You certainly hope you're playing with good players. I don't think he was an Austin Matthews merchant when he beat Austin Matthews in the Four Nations gold medal game. Like, us particularly want to remember, but that happened.
That did.
Yeah, that hurt.
And I'm looking at this might be.
Dude, why do you bring that up?
This might
be. He did make that pass to McDavid, so that's a pretty good player too. But my point is, there's a lot of good players, including in Detroit. You put him with Dylan Larkin, I think that's going to work real well too.
I agree.
Yeah. And a guy that I might be drinking the Kool-Aid here, and you gotta bear with me, but the guy that I have the most hype for next year in the Red Wing system. Talk about a guy that's killing it in Worlds right now, and a guy that I would like to be the center of Mitch Marner's line if he is a Detroit Red Wing. Marco Kasper. I think my bold take this offseason has been that I could see Marco Kasper by the end of the year next year playing like the best forward on the Detroit Red Wings. I think with his physicality, his ability, and what he's doing, like what he did down the stretch last year was impressive. I expect him to take even a step further. What do you see out of Marco Kasper next year? And I like the line of DeBrincat, Kasper, and Marner being your first line. I'm just saying, I don't like it.
I mean, there were times down the stretch this year that DeBrincat and Kasper were their first line, right? I mean, Marco Kasper had a phenomenal end to the season. I don't know that I'm ready to call him the best forward on the Red Wings. I think, there's some pretty tough competition there, but I do think he's going to take another step. I've been a big believer in Kasper back to his draft year, right? I just think he is the kind of player that you win with. Relentless motor, plays tough, gets to the hard areas of the ice. Every once in a while, he will surprise you and break out some really flashy plays. But for the large part, he's just making the smart play, the hard play every single time. And you look at his underlying numbers as a rookie in the NHL, like this is a guy who's already playing like a number 2 center on a contender, which is a really, really good player. Sometimes, there's a sophomore slump. I don't really expect it in this case. I just don't think he's going to allow that to happen. He's got a dogged work ethic. I've been very impressed by his Worlds as well. So I think you're right, Spencer. I think maybe not right about the best forward on the Red Wings, but I think you're right that he's got another step in him and that he's going to continue to become a more and more core player.
Yeah, and that's the bold, and that's what I fire back with at everybody that's like, we need power forwards and we need these. Like, if you get Marner, you're getting one of the best players in the league, and you've got Kasper and Nygaard and then Mazur, who I all see as being good power playoff forwards. So, I don't know.
And Nate Danielson, I don't know that he's a power forward, but he's a big body, right? It's all about balance. Of course, if you could get Matthew Tkachuk, you'd rather have Matthew Tkachuk than Mitch Marner for this team. Last I checked, Florida's not trading that guy anytime soon, probably ever. Same with Brady Tkachuk. Same with Matthew Nyes in Toronto. I'm sorry, you can fantasize about offer sheeting him. They're not letting him escape. No. The guy who's likely to be available is Mitch Marner. He's one of the best players in the NHL. You owe it to yourself to call him, period.
Nick, did you have a question for Max?
Yeah, Max, that Steve Yzerman press conference, looking back, was kind of all over the place a little bit. A weird vibe to it. He was almost like, I don't care what you guys think, to be quite honest. It's obvious. It seemed like he was like taking victory laps for a team that missed the playoffs a little bit there. But do you expect a big shakeup? And do you think there should be a big shakeup? I mean, obviously we're talking Marner today, but what would other moves possibly look like to bring this team ultimately to playoff contention?
Well, I guess I put that back to you. Like, what would qualify as a big shakeup? I don't think they're going to trade away, multiple core players or anything like that.
Top 4, right? Top 6, no?
Bring in, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least one of those, right? Like at least a top 4D or a top 6 forward feels like a must to me. Obviously, there's a question of can you get that done? It takes 2 to tango kind of situation. But in terms of like getting rid of guys, I don't think it's that kind of shakeup, right? Like Toronto is a team that's going to have that kind of shakeup this summer. Yeah. They're going to look real different next year because they're going to lose important players. But I think Detroit's shakeup might be, can you add players to the mix? And that's what I certainly think they're going to try for that. I don't think there's any doubt that they have to try for that. 9 years outside the playoffs is really not acceptable in any market. I believe it's the 4th longest drought in NHL playoff history, and it's the Red Wings that are at that title. Like that's who could have imagined that even 4 or 5 years ago when this thing was at the bottom, that this thing was going to get to this kind of territory. They have to make a push. I agree with you. But I don't think it'll be a shakeup in the way of like forcing guys out. I think it's more, can you bring in an impact guy either at forward, ideally top line left wing or right wing, and you can move Raymond over, or a top 4D.
Speaking of bringing up impact guys, Who do you expect to make the team this year from Grand Rapids?
Oh, this is where everyone's going to hate me. I don't think there's going to be any, maybe Danielson, I think, would be we've seen him have really good preseasons before, but I just think the guys I saw in Grand Rapids at the end of the year, it didn't look like any of them, whether that's Kosa, whether that's Danielson, whether that's Sandine Pellikka. I didn't see anyone saying, hey, I need to be on this team next year, like I saw with Marco Kasper and Carter Mazer a year ago in the playoffs. And Mazer, I guess, would be the answer. I don't know if he counts, because he came up at the end of this year. Yeah. I would think that he would make a lot of sense to be on this roster, start in the fourth line, bring some energy, bring some youth. Just got to stay healthy, right?
Yeah, every time I do what I think the lines are going to shake out to be, or when I make my mock trades and stuff and put the lines, I have the fourth line being Soderblom, Rasmussen, Mazer, and I'm just like, dude, I love that so much. I think that line would be nasty, honestly.
Yeah, there's offense, there's size, there's grit. I mean, there's a lot to like there. I could also see Soderblom up on the third line, and you bring in a veteran with some of that grit. I've thought about a Brandon Tanev in Winnipeg. I think he's the exact kind of guy that this team's missing. Just energy. Yeah, he's not gonna blow you away in the regular season, but late in the year, that's the kind of guy you win with. Plays so hard, plays so physical. I think he'd be a great fit. But yeah, I agree with you. When I make my projections, Carter Mazer's gonna be on there.
And you mentioned him a little bit there, but I think the biggest, I don't want to say loser, but the guy who missed out the most of Grand Rapids getting sent home early was Sebastian Kosa. And you really wanted to see him have a strong playoffs, and unfortunately he did not. You had Steve Yzerman talking about, I think next year I'm fine with Talbot and Mrazek. I think you can make something work with that. But he talked about possibly bringing in another bridge goalie. And for me, if you do that, you're not bridging to Sebastian Kosa, you're bridging to Trey Augustine. Would that be accurate?
I guess it probably depends on who that goalie is, right? If they bring in somebody more like they did this year with a Jack Campbell, it could just be for the sake of having depth. If somewhere in the year you need to call Kosa up, you got to be confident in what you have in Grand Rapids too, right? So Jack Campbell was spent the whole year basically in Grand Rapids, and even an Alex Lyon type, if they come in and they sign another 1 year goalie, you may just be having the organizational depth. I know it's a meme at this point, to make fun of how many goalies the Red Wings roster, but I think it is in part because if they ever get to the point where they're going to bring Kosa up for the net, you got to feel confident with what you have in Grand Rapids. Goalies go down, and it can end seasons if you get stuck without a goalie. It's that big a deal. It's that important a position. So even though the Red Wings don't have one that you feel great about, and I know that's the whole quarterback thing, if you have four, you don't have any. Yeah. But you still are trying to piece together a committee so that you always have something you feel decent about. I don't feel wild about Mrazek. I think Talbot gave you a lot of good games this year, even though he's almost 40. I think it's fine to go Talbot Mrazek, but I think the hope for the Red Wings has to be that by mid-season, by late season, Sebastian Kosa is kicking the door down and forcing his way into your crease. And if that happens, you need to know that you have somebody in GR2. So I think that's probably where the depth would come in.
Yeah, what happened in GR in the playoffs this year? There were some expectations there, and they absolutely flopped.
Yes, I mean it's really hard to say. I'm sure it's a more nuanced answer than I can give. They're breaking in some new guys. Maybe that gives you weird chemistry. They were without guys late in the year that were up with Detroit. That could be a factor. But what I saw on the ice is a Texas team that just overwhelmed them. They forechecked the crap out of them. All those young defensemen. I mean, I don't want to put it all on the defensemen. It was certainly the forwards too. I think they scored 2 goals or 1 goal in the first 2 games of that series. That's obviously not enough. There was turnovers. I just felt like Texas flustered them. And I don't know if that's a youth thing versus a veteran thing. I don't know if that's a stylistic thing, if it's a focus thing, whatever it might be. And then they blow the lead in game 3, to top it off, right? Just when you thought okay, they've figured this out. It was a comedy of errors. And I don't use comedy. I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying it was everything that could have gone wrong did.
Mm-hmm.
Last one, Nick.
Yeah, Max, Red Wings, no surprise here, fall in the lottery after winning 3 of their last 4 games to close the season after they couldn't make the playoffs. A team with 82 points ultimately wins it in New York. They fall 12-13. Could you ultimately see Stevie trading this pick?
Yeah, I certainly could. I mean, it's all about what's out there, right? I mean, but if you can get the player that you need and have him this year rather than waiting probably 3 years for whoever your first round pick is to marinate, I think you got to be willing to do that. You're not going to do it for a guy who's a rental, but if you could trade it for a guy who is signed, a guy who you can sign long term, yeah, why not? I mean, you're probably not doing it for like a 34-year-old or something like that, or even maybe like a 31-year-old. But if you can get a guy who's going to be around for a while, I think that's plenty justifiable for them. It is funny, though. You mentioned that they won these games down the stretch. You could also say they should have won more because the team from behind them moved up too in Utah. It's like whatever it was, they could have done it better. Either commit full on to losing or win a little bit more, right? Like, they split the difference and they lost on both ends.
Yeah. And Max, before we let you go, it was another little bold thing I put out there. Would you entertain a trade for Jordan Binnington involving Sebastian Cossa? To do a full bridge to Augustine. Like, you bring in Binnington, he's got 2 years left. You re-sign him for a 4-year deal, and then at the end of it, he's the 2 to Augustine's 1.
It's an interesting question because, like, you're trading upside for certainty.
Yeah.
You're also trading for a guy whose best games are always big games, but if you're the Red Wings, are you sure that you're going to put him in big games, right? Because like if you're talking just play, if you give me playoff Binnington all year, I think you have to smash the yes button on that. But he's not playoff Binnington all year. He's pretty much playoff Binnington in the playoffs, and you haven't been to the playoffs, so it's tough. I think it's very interesting. I've never heard that brought up before, so full credit to you on originality. I would entertain that. I don't know if I would do it, but I would entertain it. I'd have to think more on it.
Let's go.
You just made his day.
Oh, you did make my day. That made me
Max, when can we find you on the Athletic Hockey Show?
Yeah, so I host it Mondays and Fridays, but you can listen to all the days, and we'll be very happy with you anyway. You can also read me on the Athletic. So
you're the man. I appreciate
you, brother.
Anything else you want to say before we let you go?
Love coming on with you. No, just enjoying this Tigers run like everybody else.
Dude,
yeah, how about Javi, huh?
Yeah,
unbelievable. In a million years, I never would have predicted this. It's been incredible.
We need Tarasenko to tap into whatever that is.
Yeah, honestly, can we get Tarasenko some hip surgery in the offseason?
Seriously.
Well, or it seems like kind of Javi picked up when they got Glaber in there, and he's got this counterpart who can kind of he's been through the big market stuff and all that. I don't know. Maybe you got to get him another Russian or something.
There we go.
Yeah, I like that.
I do like
Talk
it.
to him nice,
Max, appreciate you, bro.
See you later, guys.